In this video, I want to compare my Epix to my 7X. Both of these watches are sapphire versions with the titanium bezel and titanium back, of course. So the highest end model you can get right now at least. And it would be maybe more comparable to compare the Epix to the regular 7, but I don't have that. I have the 7X here, but it really comes down to if you want that OLED screen, because that's the major difference between the two. So of course on the 7X and the 7 series of watches, you get a true always on screen, you get superior battery life, and you get, in my opinion, a better watch experience, because a watch should be on always, in my personal opinion. But of course on the Epix you just get that fantastic OLED screen, and it is really a fantastic OLED screen. You can have it in always on mode, but it's not true always on. It kind of goes into a sleep mode, and it kind of can be a little intrusive at times, but you also get significantly lower battery life when you have the always on screen. If you use gesture mode, you can get pretty comparable battery life to a Fenix 6 watch, or something in between a Fenix 6 and a Fenix 7 watch, which is kind of remarkable. Really what it comes down to between the 7 and the Epix series is definitely that beautiful OLED screen. And it is more than just nice colors to look at. It is definitely quite useful to have that higher resolution screen, that nice color screen, and also much higher contrast, and it's also extremely bright as well. So I've had no issues in any kind of lighting conditions to actually use this watch, the Epix. It's been very nice outside in sunnier weather and so on to use the Epix. And the screen, because it's so nice in color, actually can make the stuff you are doing on the watch a little more easier to read. For instance, you can see here it just looks better, but it's also easier to read, and you can actually have more text and so on the screen of the Epix. Not really sure I can show you this on the widgets of the watch, because Garmin has done a tremendous job to actually match like the font size and everything between the 7th generation and the Epix here. But you can see this colors definitely just pop a lot more, and that can kind of be useful to more clearly and faster to distinguish between different colors of the screen. If you want to see your heart rate and other things, like here you can see the weather conditions, or the air quality is moist weather. Is, I think, a little more easy to actually see the green line there on the Epix, or at least to see the green color there. It is much more vibrant, but also text is much clearer, or not much, but it's quite a bit clearer actually to see. For instance, if you look at my sensors here, just the text for the sensor, exactly the same name on both of these watches, but you can see you can have so much more text here on the Epix because of the higher resolution screen. And it's actually still very readable because there's so high contrast, and because of the higher resolutions they can actually run a smaller font and still make it clearer or easier to read, in my opinion at least. So it definitely is a nice addition to have not only the high resolution but also the colors and so on. And one area you can really tell here is you can see the heart rate zone on these watches. It's easier to distinguish between the different levels. If you just glance at the screen, if you're out on a run, of course you are moving around, it is easier to see that it's in the green zone there. Of course you kind of get used to the Transflective screen, so it doesn't really bother me, but if you compare the two between each other, definitely much higher or better color and contrast here on the Epix. And also if you're in a screen here, for instance stamina screen here, for some reason it detects a heart rate there on my Epix. But anyways, in stamina screen here, for instance, just if you're in a different heart rate zone, you can kind of see the clear distinguish on the little heart there. If you're in the green zone or red zone or orange zone, it's easier to see here on the Epix compared to on the 7X here. So on the 7X you have 64 colors, and on the Epix you have 64,000 colors, so you can show a lot more colors. And in my opinion, it's more than just makes everything look nice. It actually is a useful tool to be able to see more color, and also to see the text more clearly. If you're just glancing at the watch, like for instance if you're out and running, you can maybe a little bit faster distinguish between colors and text and so on the Epix compared to the 7X. And for instance, once you have done a run, this was a slow run I did today, get to the data screen after a run, or any other data screen really of the watch here, you can also see a more clear distinguish between the different heart rate zones here on the Epix compared to the 7X here on my left. You can see green is just green, orange is orange, and blue is blue. Of course, on the 7X you kind of get used to that, you kind of washed out colors, so it is fine, but it is definitely more noticeable here on the Tactics Delta. And again, you can see my heart rate zones there. The colors just pop, and it's more, in my opinion, than just it looks nicer on the Epix. It's actually easier to read and in all different kind of lighting conditions, it's much easier to read because you have that nice color and that bright screen. Of course, both screens are kind of easy to read right now because I have a lot of studio light going down towards the screen. Transflective screen really like, of course, having light directly on that screen for it to glow, but I think you can just get a little faster or more and or faster information on the Epix in certain scenarios. It's not always, but you kind of get used to the Transflective screen, the lower color and contrast, but it is definitely not just nice, it is kind of useful. And if you see my daily steps here, my Epix here on my right, and of course 7X here on my left, it just looks a little nicer on the Epix here, and you get much more clearer distinguish between the colors, and that's of course throughout the whole UI. So it is definitely nice with that OLED screen, and also one of the reasons why I've kept it around, because I cannot go full OLED yet. Still find the Transflective screen more useful as my daily tool, but it's definitely getting there. And one area also you can see, for instance, here in the compass or the ABC widget, you can see the little graphs there for, of course, this is height. Looks a lot nicer on the Epix screen. You get a high resolution and more data on the Epix screen here, or at least high resolution, but also the compass looks a little bit different and higher resolution here. There are some minor differences throughout the UI. Not really night and day, and not really reason enough to get the Epix over the 7X in my opinion, but the color or the vibrancy of the screen is maybe a reason. If you really prefer those kinds of screen, then I would say it's a clear advantage. Other than that, for me, my Epix buttons doesn't feel all that great. The stop button doesn't have the best response, and the rest of the buttons are a little hard to press and sometimes can feel like they have a double press. At least the back button here is probably the worst of the smaller buttons, but the stop button there, it's not really fantastic either. On my 7X, all buttons are fantastic. No issues at all. All of them have exactly the same tactical feel, and the stop button also has nice and tactical feel. So not really sure what's going on with the quality control from Garmin there. I feel like all the big watches I've had from Garmin generally have quite good buttons, but the smaller watches tend to just suffer a little bit in button quality, or at least the quality control of those buttons. So yeah, your mileage may vary of course, but definitely my 7X's buttons feels much nicer. And of course, this is only the 7X, you do have that nice flashlight. I find it more than just useful. It's something I pretty much use all day, or not all day, but every day. I haven't really used it on my run yet, or my activity yet, but definitely plan to do so in the future. But just around the house, when you need a little bit of extra lighting, this is a fantastic tool to have around you. Of course, you can kind of do something a little bit similar on the Epix, but this is nowhere near as bright. In complete darkness, it can kind of be useful, but I have not had use for that as of yet. In terms of heart rate accuracy with the new Elevate 4 heart rate sensor, of course, both the watches share the same sensor, and it's definitely improvement over the Elevate 3 heart rate sensor. Maybe not so much in measuring your heart rate. It is a little bit faster at detecting those variations in your heart rate, but definitely for pulse ox readings, much faster, much more reliable. And for me, the Epix, with my run, when I've been tracking my runs with the built-in heart rate sensor, it's been much more accurate than my 7X for some reason. They have been off like between 1 and 4 beats per second, and sometimes all the way up to 10 beats per second, where the Epix has measured correctly in my opinion, and the 7X has not measured correctly. So I'm not really sure if there's some issues with the 7th generation of watches. Maybe I've been wearing it a little bit differently on certain runs, or maybe just because it's bigger, it will just be a little off in some scenarios. Most parts they're pretty agreeable with the heart rate, but just on certain runs I just found the Epix to be quite a bit more accurate. Both the Fenix 7 and the Epix have the new type of watch splits. If you have watch band where you need to remove the watch splits, you cannot do so, at least not as of yet, as of this video here. I believe you have to kind of break the watch splits on the watch to be able to remove them, and you could probably just replace them with something else, but they are definitely not user replaceable or removable by the end user. So if you have watch band when you need to remove those splits, you cannot do so with either of these watches here. And one other thing, of course, on the Epix, because it has an AMOLED screen, you are not able to have white backgrounds anywhere really in the menu structure or in the watch face itself. If you go into your watch face, you cannot set the color of the background to white like you can on the 7 series. So you can have background color here. You don't have that. You only have color tone and data fields or data colors. You can have colors for the data fields and also the color scheme of the watch face, but you cannot set the background to white as you can on the 7 series. So if you really like that white background on your watch, That's not something you can do on the Epix as well as inside an activity. If you go into run here, for instance, you can see the background is black on the Epix, where it's default white on the 7X or the 7 series. You can also set this to black if you go into the run settings. So if you go into, for instance, your run settings here on the Epix and on the 7X, you only really have the option to set the color tone again of your activity. You cannot set the background color to black or white like you can on the 7X for each specific activity. So again, if you like the white background there, definitely don't get the Epix, get the 7X. But other than that, they're pretty much similar. You do see some nicer graphics, like for instance, if you go into your activity screen there, I don't know if you can see on the Epix, it kind of have a little topo mag-ish background there. You don't see that on the 7X. So there's like smaller like UI improvements or UI graphical improvement there on the Epix. So yeah, really, like I said, what it comes down to, do you like the OLED screen or do you like the Transflective screen? And like I said, the OLED screen is not just about the beautiful colors. It is actually a useful thing to have. And also if you're getting a little bit older, like I am, I'm into my 40s now, pixel resolution and a nicer contrast is definitely helping me read a little bit easier the OLED screen here on the Epix compared to the 7X. I don't have any issues with my 7X screen at all in any kind of lighting conditions really, but I definitely feel like I can read or see the screen a little bit easier and faster on my Epix here. For me personally, I'm going to keep both of these watches, switching between the two, because I'm not ready to go full OLED just yet. I do evaluate the Transflective screen too much. I really like that the fact that it's always on with no caveat, there's no backlighting on. If there's always on screen on the OLED here, of course you do have backlighting or light on your screen because the pixels are on all the time. So I kind of like that it's not that intrusive with the OLED always on screen on the 7X, and also the improved battery life. And yeah, I found that for me personally, the 7X feel a little more like a serious tool, and the OLED screen and on the Epix here does make it a little more toyish, even though it's definitely a serious piece of equipment or a tool. It just makes it feel a little toyish for me personally, but it's definitely nice. If I only had to pick one watch, I would go for the 7X. If Garmin had come out with an Epix with the 7X sizing, with the flashlight, maybe a 14 days battery life with always on screen, and maybe even a 1.5-inch screen, maybe been a little bit different, but as of now, I just feel like the 7X is definitely the tool that I would choose if I only had to choose one. But as you can see, both of these watches here, I can't really choose between the two. I like them both, and I definitely also like to have that saturated screen at times. Yeah, like I said, I'm going to switch it out from time to time, and for longer runs and maybe interval sessions, I will just use the Epix. And yeah, for my everyday general usage and for camping and outdoorish stuff, I will use my 7X. So yeah, kind of a boring video, because you like saturated color screens, get the Epix. You don't like saturated color screens but want the best battery life and always on screen, true always on screen, get the 7 series. Of course, I have some affiliated link down in the description below if you want to buy any of these watches and at the same time support this channel. But that's pretty much all I have for this video. I hope to see you again in a future one. Until then, take care.